Welcome to Vitalify Unplugged. You're listening to your hosts, Gree and Steph.
In this podcast, we talk about everything health and well-being, science and technology, and ancient wisdom.
This is for the quirky humans navigating the messy middle, looking for the path to true vitality.
It's for the curious minds and tired bodies looking for clarity, energy, and inspiration that works your way.
Welcome back to Vitalify Unplugged.
Hey, it's your friend Gree, intuitive AI and tech whisperer, 60 plus full throttle and talk, energy bunny, here to unleash potential so we can all have more fun, fairness, and freedom.
And I'm Steph, holistic nurse, soulful scribbler, magnetic mama, dancing through midlife with truth, magic, and messy, wild-hearted freedom.
And today we're talking about something many women in midlife feel deeply: the desire to make a difference, to do work that matters, to use your voice, your experience, and your energy for something meaningful. But there's always a catch. A lot of women have been taught that contribution comes with overgiving, exhaustion, or self-sacrifice. So today we're asking a different question. What if making an impact doesn't have to cost you your health or your wealth?
And today we're very lucky to be joined by Belinda Smith, speaker, author, education designer, and children's health advocate. All topics very close to my heart, so I'm excited to get into this. But for more than a decade, Belinda has been standing in children's health, helping kids, parents, and teachers navigate today's food culture with more awareness, confidence, and care. Big task. What makes Belinda such a strong voice for this conversation is that she understands what it means to be called to the work that matters, even when the message is uncomfortable, slow to land, or not immediately profitable. She's also in a very real season of juggling menopause, parenting, partnership, and business evolution, which makes this conversation about purpose, impact, and capacity to especially stay grounded.
Belinda, before we dive in, we'd love to hear in your own words who you are and what in life has shaped the way that you think about purpose, contribution, and doing work that matters.
Big questions because, as Steph said, I'm in menopause, which means I can make up my own mind right now about what I want to do. So, look, you're 100% right. For the last 10 years, in fact, 13 years, I've been a children's health advocate and have been working alongside schools, families and businesses to help them really get that connection between food and how it makes us feel. And I guess in doing that, what I'm actually trying to do right now is move more into the space of getting people to, in higher level positions, because I've been working at grassroots, been going to the higher level positions saying, you know, we need to actually change. We need to see food as information. It directly shapes our sleep, our brain function, our energy levels, and get them to see that it's not a conversation that we should be shying away from. And so I guess I'm mid-pivot right now. I'm still working with families and schools at a grassroots level, but it's becoming harder. And the message, I thought it was hard 10 years ago for this message to get through. It's harder now because everyone's, like we've picked up the narrative. We all know things are getting more expensive, but we're playing into food manufacturers' hands. They love people to think that we need their convenience. And so we're dealing with that. We're dealing with the school system where the curriculum is packed. And so I'm actually trying to flip that conversation now at a higher level, saying you're missing the most important and foundational input to well-being, and that's food. So let's start having that conversation rather than shying away from it. How I got into all this and why I'm so passionate is, when my son was born almost 16 years ago, my husband was diagnosed with postnatal depression, and his psychologist, who was way ahead of her time, really, said you need to look at sleep, exercise, and food. And I was like, what do you mean food? I'm mid-40s. I know what I'm doing with food. I thought I was cooking from scratch. But the more I learned and the more we saw what happened when we started to change the way we were eating, my husband was able to regulate his moods. He was able to participate in family life rather than being, walking around with glazed eyes. And my daughter, who was 5, who was we used to say beautiful one minute, psychotic the next. Her temperament totally shifted, right? And so for me, that was enough proof. I did not need to go hunting research papers like I do today to try to prove my point. In my own household, I saw it with my own eyes. And I just actually wanted to share with people, other mums and dads and caregivers, that your life can be easier when you start to really pay attention to food. And so that's why I'm still doing this all these years later. If it was for the money, I would have been out of it a decade ago. But, I think we're actually in that environment now where we really do need to take stock of everything that we're doing, because food, as I teach the kids, it's not just about the impact it's having on our own personal health, it's the impact on the health of the planet. They're very intertwined. So every time I kind of think this is all just too hard, I look at my own kids and I think, what message am I giving them if I walk away? So that's why I keep doing this.
Yeah. And having worked in schools, as I was a health promoting school nurse for 10 years, and food, trying to work with the canteens, encourage healthy eating on a regular basis, or even trying to have discussions in classrooms. Like you were saying, jam-packed curriculum, and it just felt like you were shouting into a void, even though we knew all those things. So I kind of feel your pain, and my hat's off to you for pursuing that, because I found it extremely frustrating, exhausting, and it made me sad, and I just needed to step away because otherwise I was going to burn out and not in the space to do that. And sorry, Gree, I know you're looking at me like, don't go off on a tangent, Steph, but I'm about to just quickly. But having understood or had the feeling that food is medicine, early on working out Indigenous communities with Bush Tucker, and being in India and Ayurvedic medicine and Thailand, and having a Sri Lankan husband where they cook from the garden, the coconuts, the on
That
the fire.
sounded like shrunken.
Sri Lankan. And so just understanding, even though that we live in this modern world, there are ways to still tap into sort of some ancient wisdom around food and have that deeper understanding. So sorry, that was really long, but I fully resonate with.
It probably fits a little bit further down, but hey, we've done it now.
Yes, we'll come back to it. But I guess on this what structure, Gree? No, just joking. On Vitalify Unplugged, this season we're talking about wealth. We would love to explore from your perspective, based on your relationship with helping people understand food and nutrition. When you hear the word wealth, what does that mean to you?
Well, there's no more wealth in the world than your own health, like really. If we think of it on the day-to-day consumerism level, you think of wealth as money. But I've got, and we've probably every listener right now knows of at least one family where they've got someone who's either struggling with cancer or deep depression. There is nothing more important than your health, and that is true wealth. Because when you
Yeah.
don't have your health, you can't participate in life, you can't contribute to the world, and it's costing you a fortune.
Yeah.
You know, like I've got an uncle right now who is going through chemo, and I'm just seeing and hearing of bills racking up. You know, you might have all the money in the world, and then if you lose your health, that money's gone. You know, like it gets spent at way faster rate. So wealth for me is, you know, is your actual health. And at this stage of my life, when I'm, you know, 57, and my, you know, kids and daughter's 20, just moved out, my son's almost 16, I'm starting to even think about my own health, because even though I eat well, I know I don't move as much as I should. I've learnt that in menopause I need to be lifting weights, which when I grew up, you needed to be read thin. Weights was out of the question, you know, and I recognize that as I get older, I'm likely to have more falls. So I've set myself a personal goal this year to be able to get up off the ground in various positions without using my hands. So that's for me the next iteration of my wealth in investing in my own health, you know? So,
I love that goal. Getting up from the ground without having to use your hands. It's kind of like, you know, I'm a couple of
Can you
years
do it, Gree?
ahead of you. I can.
Yeah.
I can. But you know, I don't jump straight up, right? But I can get up without using my hands, because I didn't have a hand for a while, remember?
Yeah.
So-
And it's
well, if
taught
I'm
in
being
yoga.
honest, I didn't at the start of the
Is
year.
it just your hands or your arms as well? Because you could go via plank, right?
No, doing without. Yeah.
I know. No, I can, but I think you know, that really resonates. You know, even though we need money to live, if you don't have your health, you can't actually even get that money, right? You can't. So there's so much to that. I've always, you know, I always come back to that definition the first time I heard about wealth, because I thought it was about money, but it wasn't really. So, but it really frames the conversation as we move through today's episode. So today we're really exploring meaning, contribution, and making a difference without burning out, because that happens too, even when you ignore it, because I'm really good at that. And a lot of women, especially in midlife, for us, there becomes a point where success alone isn't enough, and there's a longing to really do something that matters. And I've been sitting in that for a long, long time myself. But that desire often gets tangled up with old patterns, like proving yourself, over functioning, caring too much, or believing that contribution has to hurt to count. So this conversation is really about finding a more sustainable way to make an impact, one that fits your truth, your season, and your capacity. So,
Belinda,
let's move into it.
Yeah, you've spent years standing for children's health and raising awareness around something that really matters, but is totally undervalued or unrecognized. It's not that it's unrecognized, but it matters.
Ignored
but
in a
it's
way.
not getting. Yeah. So what first made this work feel important enough that you couldn't ignore it? And I think you alluded a little bit to it earlier on.
Yeah,
Share with the rest of the world, I guess.
Oh, and I'm sure my husband's been an advocate and a spokesperson for Panda, so I know he won't care about me sharing this. But I remember one day, still catches in my chest and my throat, when he was in his depths of his depression, and I had a brand new baby at home, and my daughter was in her first year of school, and we had been running a photography business for a decade together. And he was the lead photographer. I was admin, everything in the business. And when his depression hit, he couldn't get out and shoot anymore. He, or he did dabbles, but our income just kind of plummeted. And so we had to take a line of credit against our mortgage. And we gave ourselves a year to help get him back on path. And I remember one day I was getting my daughter ready for school, and I had our little, in his basket wheeling around with me, and I could hear all this big noise coming from the front of the house, which is where we ran the photography business from. And I went down to the studio, and he was in there and he was punching cardboard in the office. And I was like, what the hell's going on? And he was like swearing. I'm so effing angry. And I'm like, why? Because I don't know. And I had to ask him to get out of the house because I needed to get my daughter ready for school. I didn't want her exposed to that. And later that afternoon, he rang me and he said, I think I've got it. And I said, what is it? And he'd been off gluten for about 4 months at this stage. And then that weekend before, we'd gone out with friends and they brought those white bread rolls that are like from Coles or Woolworths that, you know, like the aroma gets in your nose and you want to stuff it in your face. Well, he did stuff numbers of them in his face. And he said to me, I think that was actually it. That's the only thing I can put this down to. And we tested it on and off for a period of a few months. What happens when he doesn't have gluten? What happens when he does have gluten? And we saw this massive difference. And I was like, that's one food group, right? Like one food group that could make that massive difference. And so I wanted to study like nutrition, but I couldn't fit that in with a brand new baby and a business that I was still trying to prop up and a new daughter. So I actually enrolled into doing like an online health coaching course, really only for my own, interests. And the more I learnt, the more fascinated I become by this. And our daughter started getting teased about her lunchboxes, and she stopped eating. And it took her, probably 3 or 4 weeks to tell me that she was getting teased, and that's why she wasn't eating at school. And so I spoke to her teacher, and she said, why don't you come in and talk to the kids about why her lunchbox looks different? And just to put this in context, it's nothing radical, right? She just didn't have a sandwich in there, and she had homemade muesli bars rather than the ones in a packet. Like you wouldn't think it's that radical, but it was. Evidently she was poor because she didn't have packets and all of those things. So I decided that I would take the teacher up, but rather than talk to the kids about her lunchbox per se, I thought I would make food a fun experiment. And I created some quirky experiments to explain different ideas about food and how our body kind of handles it. And the next day I had parents saying to me, oh my gosh, my son was pulling stuff out of the pantry and telling us what was in it. And that was in fact my very first sponsor. They owned a business called Worldwide Printing, and they then went on to support me for 3 years, printing all of my student handouts, because that one lesson made me realize when kids had fun with food and they understood it, they start to work with their parents rather than push them against it. And that has been, even now when life gets hard and I think, you know what, I'm going to walk away from this. It's like the universe just throws a testimonial at me that goes like, that's why you do this, right? Forget everything else. And so that's why I keep coming back to it. And the reason why I keep focusing on kids is us mums, we don't even buy ourselves new bras and undies, right? So
I'm
if you try to sell
something,
so you try to sell something to them about their own health, they're just not interested. But you say it about kids, and it piques their interest. And so, let's be real. When we're in our retirement, it's this generation of kids who are going to be supposedly in the workforce, paying our tax-paying dollars so that we can have pension. I don't think that's going to happen anymore anyway, because most of them are going to end in the medical system, sadly. But that's what drives me, they really are the future of this country, and we owe them better than what's been happening. We really do.
Well, thank you for sharing such a vulnerable moment as well with in regards to your family and a bit more about the journey. And I think it's, what a joy that somebody actually saw the opportunity and was able to sponsor you for the first you know,
Mm.
with some of the costs and things. But I guess we live in a society of convenience, I guess, when it comes to food. We're short on time and all that sort of stuff. So I was just wondering what it's like to carry a message that people may not always be ready to hear. I know the kids are, but it's going to be the parents or the schools or the health educators. What do they learn about? What is it? Not health educators, but doctors. They have like a week or two of nutrition in their whole
Mm.
5-7 years of training, right? So
Yeah.
what's it like to carry that message when people aren't ready to hear, both professionals and families, I guess?
Yeah, well, look, I got some really great advice from a mentor in my first couple of years of doing this because, we sold our house, very bad financial move. Sold our house in Sydney to buy a bus and convert it and turn it into a big mobile billboard and traveled around the country for 2.5 years to raise awareness about what's in our food, what's happening to children's health. And that trip actually made me realize that I was so naive. I totally had forgotten that I had learnt this stuff because of a moment in time when my husband got sick. If that hadn't have happened, I would have still been, cooking the way I was from jars of chicken tonight and stuff like that. But when I started to travel, there was 3 groups of people. There were the people who had already discovered this and they were like, thank goodness someone else is talking about it. They were feeling like a nut job, like what I got people calling me nut job, fun police, and a whole lot of other worse names. Then there was the people who were like, wow, is this real? It can't be happening. Like they would never allow that food on the supermarket shelf. And then there were the people who there was no way that they were either going to believe it or they were ready to hear it. And my mentor said to me, your job is to get as many people who are already there to get behind you to keep you going. And the second group of people are those people who are in the middle who are listening and they're just waiting to get the information to do something about it. He said, forget the others. And so over the years, I've learnt to thicken up my skin a bit to recognize that there are people who us adults are our own worst enemies. Like if we got out of our own way and we made this about the kids, people would want this work hand over fist. But us adults get in our own head about our own relationships with food and we make food weird and therefore we don't want to have the conversations because it's hard for them. Not that it'd make a difference to the kids, but it's just hard for them. And I've seen that so many times, with leaders particularly who just can't get out of their own way because of their own dysfunctional relationship with food. So it's one of those things that you just got to try to focus on the people who are there, which now the reason why I'm trying to elevate at the leader level is getting them to actually recognize that, we can teach kids about resilience. We can teach them about bullying. We can keep putting on extra learning support officers at school. We can keep changing the way we teach kids maths and literacy. But if they're not actually nourished, how are they going to sit in their chair and concentrate? No amount of change in that. So that's why I'm actually now, I'm just in the final stages of developing a food literacy framework. And I need to get some other people behind it. That we just need to say, there's a framework for everything in education except for food literacy. So, that's
because
my
that's meant to come
drive.
from home, isn't it?
Well, look, I mean, the thing is,
it's expected to.
Well, in Australia, everyone talks about school canteens, but I've been collecting data in schools for 6 years, and I can tell you 80% of food comes from home. 2% of kids don't even have food. And then the rest is a mix of
That's
kids who get all the food from school and a little bit from the canteen. So, you know, we actually just need to understand that it is shaping everything in our school grounds. And my message for schools is it isn't your job to tell a parent what to do, but it is your job once they walk through the front gate. You've got a duty of care to actually make sure that when you're there, that your kids aren't getting taught maths with M&Ms, or they don't go and do a PE class or a cross country and get given a Zupa Duper. Like the school gets to make those decisions, right?
So
So
about sausage
anyway.
sizzle, barbecues.
Depends on the
I know.
sausages.
Fundraisers. No, it's
Yeah.
the fun. Yeah, it's how you make money. You know, like that's all the arguments I used to get day in and day out.
Yeah.
I think
And you know what?
connect you with
The odd sausage sizzle and the cake fundraiser would not matter one iota if the kids were getting nourished for the rest of the part of their day, but they're not. It's just icing on the cake. Anyway, so yes, that's why I keep doing this, and why now I'm thinking at this stage of life, I've had a decade of trying to be grassroots. And early on, I did dabble at giving evidence to parliamentary committees, and my work was mentioned in Parliament, but then it just kept falling flat. And now the research is prolific about the connection between food and mental health. And what's driving me now is only 2 years ago, I applied for funding from, I won't say which state education department for scholarship funding for schools. And they told me that there's not enough research to connect food to mental health.
Seriously?
I can tell you right now, and that was 2.5 years ago.
But even then,
So now I'm passionate. Like I'm like, okay, red flag to the bull. Like, are you for real? You think there's no research? Here it is.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's such deep, meaningful work. But at what point does that type of service turn into a self-sacrifice?
I would like to say when I was reading the potential questions for this, I'm thinking, I am not a good representation of someone who has been able to balance having an impact-driven work and her own health or her own financial needs. I have my family's financial position is way worse because of the decisions that we made to, promote children's health, like selling our home, converting a bus, and even, coming back. And we had, I had 3 lots of funding from primary health networks, and I lost all of those. They moved into other areas of funding, and I lost $200,000 worth of funding over the course of 6 months in the business. So there's been some really rock bottom times. Then, of course, there's been COVID and schools closed down. I haven't turned off late at night when I should. So I'm not a good representation of a person who has an impact-driven business and doesn't let it affect their life. I would like to think I'm actually starting to get a little better with this now that I'm post-menopause, because I've actually, now that I've said I'm going to continue to work at the grassroots level, but this voice needs to be heard at a higher level. I've actually set myself a goal that now the kids are older, I can actually travel and work. So I want to go to more places and travel at the same time as delivering these messages. So I'm hoping I can claw a little bit of, life back for myself through that.
Joining your passion with your passions together.
Because life is short. Like my daughter just left home on the weekend. Like that was massive. And my son's only got 2.5 years left to school. And so I'm starting to think of the next stage of my life. And I would like to throw in a little bit more travel into that. So yeah.
Yeah. Gonna talk? Okay.
Yes. So I think both Steph and I will probably disagree in terms of you being a good example or not of somebody who has not let it affect. I think when we go into work that is meaningful and purposeful, I think we all, I mean, I'm a workaholic, so I sacrificed even when I was in corporate. I self-sacrificed a lot, right? And like ignored every other signal and all that sort of stuff. But I do think that as women, specifically when, I don't know if this is an Australian thing, but I feel like all the good work is expected to be done by charity, like by not-for-profits, and you shouldn't be getting paid for stuff that you love to do. And when you're making a difference, and it's one of my pet peeves, but I won't go down that rabbit hole right now because I think maybe we kind of just move forward and look at impact and income and real life and things because it builds on from that. But so what you raised was that it does have we still have that need to generate income, and yes, you could have been in a different place, but we've always got that, and we've had a lot of conversations. We've known each other for quite some time now, and we've had a lot of conversations about that. But how do you feel that where do you want to take this now? How do you think that can actually really have the impact that I know you've had in the past, but as you're shifting?
Well, it's not proven yet that this can work. I think.
Well, you will prove it.
Yes. One of the things that I've struggled with in the last, since I lost the government funding, it happened to coincide with when teachers rightfully got their pay rise, right? And the government funded part of it for the first time. And then all of a sudden, schools had to find the money to cover the wages ongoing, which for any teacher who's out there, you deserve that and 10 times more.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
Like we as a country do not give teachers the level of respect that they deserve. And I say that from over a decade of meeting thousands and thousands of incredible teachers, and probably half of those are at burnout stage. And my husband's a teacher as well, and I see it, I see days when he's got nothing left in his tank. So their budgets were cut, but then they had to find the funding for this. So they've got very little funding for, I'm going to say, extracurricular activities, like even excursions have become limited. So let alone incursions, and let alone incursions like ours, which talks about a topic that schools are uncomfortable with, so I'm now hoping that in separating myself out from the school incursion business and pitching myself as a children's health advocate will always be front and center, but more as a food literacy strategist, which is, I work with people in positions of power and also at a leader level in a school to assess, where is it in your school you could get the most leverage from tweaking something. So my goal is to take myself out of that incursion-based space as being 100% of my income. I will always be in that because that's where you get the grassroots level, the kids, the teachers, the parents. But now I want to kind of take on more of that speaking thought leadership position of the food literacy strategist and put forward the need for this framework and get paid accordingly to speak at events for, leaders, for principals, for education leaders, for people who are shaping curriculum, even workplaces, because, a lot of people that work at workplaces are parents, and every time their kid's sick, a parent has to take time off work. So, or, you get the call saying your child's in sick bay, you got to leave, right? So there's a real thing there that when our kids are well, your productivity is likely to increase. So I'm actually it's just something, there's no proof that this is going to work, but in my gut, that's the calling I currently have, is that's what I need to do now.
I'm pretty convinced that you're going to make this happen. But
Yeah.
what would you say
And
that?
it's needed. That's where we're at in
it's
the
so
world.
needed.
Like Australia's at that point, it needs that.
It's so interesting that it's so hard when we all talk about, the second brain. I actually think it's the first brain, but that's your gut, right?
Yeah.
It's what governs pretty much everything. But I'm just thinking for other women that are kind of have these missions, not the same mission, but other missions, like other things that are meaningful. That tension between making money and doing what your calling is and things like that. How do you navigate that tension, of not making the money you should without shame? What would your advice be to others? I hope you don't I hope you don't feel shame.
When just being brutally honest, when I lost all that funding in quick succession, I did feel a lot of shame. Because I thought, how could I have been in business for nearly a decade and have all of my eggs in this basket? Like, I shouldn't say all, like 90% of my eggs in this basket, relying upon money from somewhere else. I was so embarrassed that I'd let myself get into that position. And, there were, at that stage, my husband was in his, he was just driving buses because he was doing his Masters of Education. And so he wasn't earning very much money. We were very much reliant upon the money that I could take out of the business. And so, it was hard. And I was working, I ended up having to go get 2 part-time jobs, so and I now look at it and can give myself the grace of
Forgiveness.
And now, I'm fortunate that my husband's in a teaching role, he's getting paid better money. There's less stress about what I can take out as an income. But with that said, he's, said, Bill, by the end of the year, you need to be earning some money from this business now. So
you'll be rocking it in a couple of months, girl.
So it is a challenge, and I guess I'm fortunate from the perspective that I have a partner who has experienced the profound impact that food can have. And even to the point that he ended up with an eye condition a week ago for uveitis. And we started, he went to the optometrist, they gave him steroids and stuff. And then we started having conversations because I said, that's an inflammation, that's your body. So if that's an inflammation, something else is going on. And he was very open to, to talking about what he'd been eating. And he recognized that, that in the last, months when he's had all of his assessments due and all the markings that he needed for end of term 1, that he was hitting the sugar really hard. And, your eyes are a window for diabetes. Like your optometrist can always tell if you're pre-diabetic before anybody else can. So he went and saw an iridologist yesterday and, and so, I'm really fortunate that he understands the significance that food can actually play and therefore hasn't been to the point where he said, this has just got to stop. So my kids, my daughter's probably more, now that she's 20 and she understands the financial reality of being an adult, she's like, this adult sucks. She's worried because she says, if you're 57, Mum, you should be getting ready for retirement. You should have a job that's paying you and, just so that you're comfortable. And I'm like, no one retires at 60 anymore, sweetheart. And I would be bored batshit crazy if I just
It's about
sat
having
around,
the financial freedom, though.
Yeah.
You've still got 3 years, you'll get there.
I can't see that in 3 years' time I'd stop talking about this at all.
I will never stop.
Yeah. I mean, what I would love, and I'm not sure if we were recording this or when it was you off, at this stage of my life, with knowing that in a few years' time I'm going to be an empty nester, or I think there's a better way of saying that now. It's like the the kids have spread their wings or something else, that I want to still do this work, but I actually want to see the sights. So, you know, one of my longer term goals is I actually want to be in Italy, in Tuscany, on a balcony, overlooking a winery, and have my trip paid as a business expense. That's what I'm setting for myself, you know, and knowing that I'll have that kind of freedom because the kids weren't here. I will only be able to get paid to do something like that if I step out of this zone where I've been playing at the grassroots level and become a thought leader. So that's kind of
or
next
be the thought
generation.
leader that you are on a bigger stage.
Yeah.
Because you don't become a thought leader. You're already a thought
are
leader. You
one.
have been for, 10, 15 years in this space. So it's just about reframing what you're doing. You know, sorry, I keep jumping in with my little short ones there.
That's all right.
I mean, and what I'm hearing is what I think is for me an ultimate goal is having your passion and your purpose and your prosperity all woven into one. And I feel like, and we've talked about this on other episodes as well, but when you feel like you're living in your purpose and you're giving back, it's not hard to receive, and therefore it just becomes this movement that all intertwine, and I just think that's a really beautiful vision to keep holding on to, and one that we all in some way have our own version of. So, and that's what this space is for, is to keep it really open and show that there's not one way to live in a wealthy life. And often hardship is a part of being wealthy, because if you don't have that hardship, then how can you recognize when something really beautiful is happening and appreciate it and hold it and be able to be expanded enough to receive it? And so I feel like I see you already sitting there, but it's the space that's coming. So I guess when the person that keeps coming to my mind when talking to you, Belinda, is like, have you heard of Zach Bush? Yeah, and the work he's doing, and he relates to how our health is intertwined with the soils and all that stuff. And so but those voices are there, and he's got a big profile, but it's still hard to get the message out. So how do you keep backing a message when the world's not catching up as quick as we would like them to?
Because I think it just it's I guess struggling to get my words out. If there's one less person talking about it, then that's one less person. Like we need more people talking
More
about
conversations.
it. Yeah, more, and not just this is about all sorts of things. Like I look at climate change, another one. Regenerative farming. These are all really important conversations, and they're all conversations that many, many people aren't prepared to listen to, because it means change. It means we have to look at ourselves and think, oh, I have been living excessively, and that's not a nice mirror for a lot of people to look into. Not everyone does a lot of work on themselves and can recognize this in themselves. And I guess there's just people like, I look at Damon Gamo, for instance, from he did That Sugar film, and then now he's right into like regenerative farming. He's done a couple of documentaries about climate change and hope, and for the same reason that people like him keep doing it, because we just can't imagine a world where these conversations stop. And if more people back out because the conversations are harder, it's just going to get worse. And, I already get quite sad and sometimes become very overwhelmed when I think of what is my kids' 30s going to look like. Like in 10 to 15 years' time, what is their world going to be like? And I just, I guess it's just pure stubbornness as well. Like if I don't do this, what else am I going to do? You know, like, what am I going to do? I'll like sit in a job making money for shareholders. Like, I did that for 17 years. I don't want to go back there.
I think it's so important to stay true to yourself as well as kind of go, okay, how can I? So bridging that sort of thing of, staying true to yourself. You see a problem as a problem that needs to be solved. You've probably seen it decades before anybody else actually want to realize they have a problem. You know how I always say, I mean, I can see the solution here and people don't even know they have a problem. You did that. Now people kind of understand that it is, but it's about staying true to yourself, but then figuring out how you can do it. And I love how you are repositioning and reframing and working towards the leaders in that space, because you are a thought leader. You have been for a number of years. And I think that's really important to that. So
I want to say that addresses wealth integrity, you're so wealthy in your integrity that's inspiring, and that more people should step up and stand in their truth unapologetically and, face the hard roads. I'm like, I need to do that a bit better myself now, just even in this conversation. Yeah. So we also wanted to explore the idea that contribution does not have to be huge to matter.
This is so, so important. And I often say this to mums particularly. Like they'll say to me, I don't want to be that mum. And like they're talking about that mum who rocks the boat at a school. Well, like you don't have to be that mum that's rocking the boat at the school. You just need to be that mum in your own home. Show up consistently for your family, role modeling that food's a fun experiment, that you have fun cooking, that you love. Like I love, even all this time later, looking down at the lunch boxes that I make for my family and thinking, when they open that today, they're going to know that that's come from home with love. Just be that person you need to be in your own family, because the research is actually very clear. What we role model at home has a profound impact on what our kids take out into their life. And, it's really interesting now because I've just gone through a period of, my daughter went to America 3 times in the last 2 years since leaving school. And before she left, she wrote me the most beautiful letter. I don't know if I've still got it on my desk. Anyway, long and the short of it was that, Mum, when I go to America, the thing that scares me the most is not having your food. Thank you. I've always been so well fed, blah, blah, blah. And one day I'm going to share that with my own kids.
Aww.
That was her letter. And I thought, my job's here is done. And then she come back from America and was eating appallingly because she had her own money. She could buy her own stuff. And one day at the dinner table, she's like, I just wish I could get my hands on a bag of Red 40. And like, for anyone that's listening, Red 40 is a colour that is known. Was before the recent changes, readily available in America, and it's very excitatory for the brain. It's hyper palatable, like it's just, and I'm thinking in my head, what the actual F? Like, I've taught you better than this. And then I remembered that my Empowering Kids framework that I teach parents is really about, the very first step is you have to let go of their response, and you just have to keep, this is Mel Robbins actually, let them, because they're going to have their money, they're going to go and buy it all anyway. Let me just show up, and every day I will feed them nourishing food. So that's the biggest thing that we can do to have an impact, is just what is it that we're doing in our own home. And this applies to everything, not just food. How are we being consumerism? Are we buying things just for the sake of buying things, or are we buying from online stores like Shein and Temu, or are we, if we do need to buy something, do we go to an op shop and find something that's pre-loved? There's so many things in our own home that we can do that has an impact without having to put yourself out there.
And that to me just, sorry, great. That
No,
to me
no.
just expands the word nourishment, because you're not
Mm.
just now nourishing your body, but you're also nourishing your mind with, what are you consuming in
Mm.
terms of content or materialism or what have you. Like, it's a nourishment, like, do you get the
Yeah.
quick fix, or do you wait and save and get the thing you really want, or do you like buy the new jacket, or do you find the same one that's still in good nick in a brilliant op shop? Like, some of my favorite jackets are op shop jackets, actually, and I'm very
All my
loud and
clothes
proud
used to
about
be.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
But
just I'm going to a conference on the weekend. It's on Monday next week, actually. And it's the first time that I'm going in a room with policymakers and education leaders. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to get myself a new outfit. I took myself to the local Lifeline store, and I hunted and hunted, and I got the best outfit to wear with a pair of boots and a jacket that I've already got for $4, right?
Yeah.
And I look at it because I always see myself as not as one of these speakers. I've got a beautiful friend who's very successful on the speaking circuit, but she wears heels like that. She's always in a suit. She looks immaculate. And I'm like, I'm going to be like Breno Brown, like kind of comfy, like speaking my truth while not having to be overly dressed up. And so, yeah, I'm going to go to this conference and rock a $4 Lifeline outfit. Yeah.
It's I think it's just really important to be yourself no matter what you do, right? And if that's $4 or $400, that's fine. If you can afford 400, that's fine. But I just love finding things that are pre-loved and things like that. And I just had an idea for I think it's brilliant. Let them, all that sort of stuff. But maybe you could just strategically leave that letter somewhere easily findable for your daughter.
Oh no, she's back now that she's moved out of home. She recognizes the importance of being able to cook for herself. Yeah.
But
So
and
it
I
was
also think
you've
it's
just got to trust that if you've done enough, it circles around.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they got to go out and experiment.
Yeah, odd little this and that is okay every now and again, right? As long as the general is good.
Yes, that's right.
That can also be nourishment for the soul, I think.
Yeah.
For the soul and head. I
tell you
love that wealth integrity.
What has actually been working for me post-menopause is actually every night writing down what are the things that I actually have done that day to take care of myself, because it becomes very confronting when you sit down to journal
and you can't remember
and you've
anything.
got nothing to write of what you've done. Whereas, like the days where I've got up and I've meditated, I've done my Tai Chi walking, I've done an enema, and I've gone for a walk on the beach. It's like tick, 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 and like, yes, you know what? I can deal with like the stress and whatever of the full on of the workplace because I've done all that for me, so I think that is like that art of writing down and seeing that you've done nothing is actually very powerful because it calls you into a place of responsibility. And then you've got to ask yourself, why am I more committed to everybody else's health than my own health?
Because if you don't look after yourself, can't look anywhere.
You got to fill up your own cup first with nourishment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would I agree? Isn't that? So, Belinda, if someone listening feels deeply called to make a difference, but also knows they're tired, what if their contribution didn't have to cost them all their health?
Well, it shouldn't. That's the thing. There's that word should. Like when we're shitting on ourselves. So don't go shitting on yourself. Right? It's as my old coach would say, it doesn't need to be, like either this or. You can have both and.
Yeah.
So it's about how can you have an impact and still have your health, which, as I have been brutally honest, that has not been my modus operandi for, a lot of my decade in this business. But it certainly is now. I think probably, the last 12 months since that postmenopause has hit and I'm saying goodbye to a daughter going off, and then all of a sudden I'm starting to think, oh gosh, I'm actually moving to that next stage of my life. And it's even actually made me rethink my relationship with my husband. How do I actually make sure that we are connecting really well so that when the kids aren't there, we're not a statistic? Because like the statistics of people who separate when their kids leave home is really high, you know? So, and I don't want that, you know, like, you know, the Blue Zone project shows that community and relationships are more important to longevity than
100%.
anything else. So it's just actually really started me to look at things very differently. And that journal prompt, you know, like what have I done for myself today? So powerful, you know. And if even the days where I've only done 2 of my self-care things, it's like, well, why did you only do 2 today? What was more important? So yeah, like I would say, just remember both, and you can do both.
Yeah.
Don't have to
I love
sacrifice
that.
one for the
Love
other.
that,
Actually, yeah.
So my partner and I have decided to go and start dancing together. We were
Oh,
meant to start
fun.
last. So Kizomba, it's Angolan tango. I can't wait to get started. But we were meant to start a course yesterday, but I'm going to be away 2 weeks. And I'm like, okay, let's do the June start. But we're practicing at home instead. But it's just
Cool.
having something that practice at home is fun for us. But going to a class where there are other people, because there's community, that's connection. And to be honest, and we're all there, we're kind of solopreneurs. We're sitting here by ourselves at our home office, usually just a few meters from bedroom, right? And we sit here all day and we work and we meet people online, but then we don't get out.
Human
I don't
connection.
anyway. I'm terrible at it. And I guess you get to see a few people, Steph, because you've still got kids that you take to school, or maybe sometimes you do as well, Belle. But you know, it's really important to do that. But we you know, we often ask when we try to ask our guests this question because it's called Vitalify Unplugged. What does living unplugged mean to you, Belinda?
Living unplugged, I definitely need more of it. Living unplugged is actually, I think, the ability for yourself to be with yourself, doing something for yourself that doesn't involve technology. So that means not even sitting on the couch and watching Netflix. You know, like I know, right? But I've just started to really get back into painting, you know, like I used to do it before I had kids. And my beautiful friend who passed away a little over a year ago, she was the best gift giver. And I've got things like she gave me this beautiful like a diamond art thing, not something that I would normally buy for myself, but sitting down and doing that, it's very meditative. Like, you know, you're just in there like looking with your 57-year-old eyes thinking, what's that number? And getting your, you know, like the magnifying glass out to find the right color. And I've also, because I've been using AI quite a lot for work, I want to make sure that I'm not letting that become my thinking. So I've been playing like Boggle, like I don't know if you know that, just on my own, you know, like putting the timer on, how many words that I can do. So yeah, that's kind of unplug, walking on the beach. Oh, the best way to unplug. Yeah.
Just seeing sunrise. I know we share photos of sunrises, don't we, Mel?
Yeah, I love
here's mine this morning.
Yeah. So yeah, I think for me, being unplugged is, you know, no technology, but doing something for yourself, you know, is really important.
Yeah, 100% agree. And, a beach walk with your no shoes and sand is just very grounding, if not anything else. And if you got a sunrise in there, it's even better.
Yeah.
Belinda, it's been such an awesome conversation. And if people listening want to learn more about your work, where can they find you?
Well, I'm just building my thought leadership website, which is just bellsmith.com.au. And over there, you'll see the progress that I'm making in terms of really repositioning the conversation that food is information for our body and our brain. And when you do that, you can take all the emotion out of it, because it's really just around what information am I giving my body? But in terms of the work that I do in schools, it's actually therootcause.com.au. So over on LinkedIn, you can follow me just at Belinda Smith, and it's also attached to The Root Cause AU and The Root Cause AU on both Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome.
Thank you for the opportunity to say that.
We'll make sure that we put some links in the show notes so people can click through and find you as well. So we'll put them in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Belinda and Steph. This has been such a grounding conversation about purpose, impact, and contribution that doesn't come at the expense of your well-being. And Belinda has reminded us that making a difference doesn't have to mean overgiving, overproving, or burning yourself into the ground, although we've all been there a little bit at times.
Yeah.
It can be honest, sustainable, and deeply meaningful, especially when it's rooted in truth rather than martyrdom. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And as always, stay curious, stay connected, and keep living unplugged.
Thank you, Belinda.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Vitalify Unplugged. If this episode sparked something in you, share it with a friend. Hit follow or subscribe. And don't forget, we love hearing from you. So send us a message and tell us what's lighting you up. See you in the next episode.